So thank you so much. I'm not going to just, I think that's enough of the introduction. So thank you everyone for joining, and thanks everyone for watching. And Tara is going to speak. Tara is my good friend whom I just met uh, a few months ago in India. Our like online friendship turned into a much more real family level friendship. Thank you so much, Tara, for joining. It's a pleasure having you.
Ashwin, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so I'm not decided as in how I'll make this, all these lectures available, but I'll try to find a way and make it available in some days after the actual live symposium is over, and we'll see how that works out. So, and I'll just leave you, and you can take the stage over, and I'll be away with. I mean, I'll be there always watching you, and you can just take over.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Ashwin, for having me, and thank you to everyone who's participating in this symposium. I'm really enjoying the collaboration of astrologers around the world, so I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm going to get my share screen set up, and while I do that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Tara All. I am a professional astrologer, and I do a whole lot of stuff, which I won't really take up our time with here. If you're interested, you can go to my website, which is taraall.com. Let me get the share screen going. Okay, here we go. And I'll start off by saying that I am not super awesome at managing the chat. So Ashwin may jump in if I miss something, because it's really more fun when we all participate. So if anybody's out there and you have anything to share or questions, please just hop right in. So as I was saying, you can contact me at taraall.com. My name is spelled TARAAAL.com. And my topic for today is called We Are the Planets, Astrology as a Living Meditation. This topic I have been either teaching on, lecturing, writing about for the past 4 years, and it continues to be the theme that stays really rich and meaningful for me. And what I mean by that is not just useful with my clients or in my daily work with astrology, but really in my personal life. I have really come to have a new relationship with the archetypes and a new relationship with myself through living planets first. And I'm going to talk about that here as we go through the presentation, but I just want to offer that this is really kind of a testament to my last 4 years of my life, and the way that I've been able to take astrology, which in some ways for me is a very brainy activity, you know, of being stuck in my head trying to figure things out, to a merger more with my moment-to-moment experience, and being also in my body and in my heart. And credit for that goes to my teacher and mentor, Adam Gainsbourg, who originally turned me on to the technique Planets on the First. Okay, for some reason the share is not. There we go. Okay. Those technical difficulties. I'm going through a huge Neptune transit, so if I like fade out or do something crazy, that's my excuse. All right. So, astrology and ego. A while back, I was listening to one of Stephen Forrest's, I think, one of his recordings or a podcast, and he was talking about how astrology is all about ego, and how we use astrology to describe and understand our self-image or our ego identity. And then this idea that our true selves, from a spiritual perspective, can't be defined with words, which was interesting because I'd never really thought about astrology being particularly linked with exploring the ego before. I know ego is part of it, but I hadn't thought about it in that way, which kind of got me thinking, and which led me into this, well, but when we can observe and get to know our ego without identifying with it, you know, we really free ourselves up. And this I borrowed from Stephen Forrest, and I don't have a formed opinion on what I think karma is, But from his perspective, hopefully that I am paraphrasing this accurately, forgive me if I'm not, that karma really is just our old patterns, attachments, and habits, you know, and the ego is kind of the part of us that holds on to that. And astrology, kind of from a bigger viewpoint, is really all about cycles. And any of you who practice astrology, you know this, it's all about cycles. You know, things are always at some point from beginning to ending, and truly every ending is a beginning, and cycles are going on within cycles. In fact, so many cycles that probably if we really knew what was all going on, our minds would have some sort of a implosion. But here's just some of my thoughts around cycles in general. So I'm a big fan of Chris Cornell, and of course when I learned that his birthday, July 20th, is the same as mine, I was just even more interested. And then I started to really pay attention to his music. And he really writes a lot about the moon, and from a moon perspective, which certainly makes sense for a Cancer. But in particular, he speaks about, and this came from me listening to him in an interview, but he speaks about humans creating confined labyrinths, and then we live inside these labyrinths. And he talks about how if whatever we create or we thought was real doesn't work, that then we think that we don't work. And this idea of the moon, because the moon goes through all these phases, is always changing, the moon is the ultimate symbol of accepting the end of something we thought defined us. Because when you work with the moon, it's forever changing. Same as the moods in us are always changing, right? The moon in the sky is changing, at least in how we can see it from our perspective. And just like us, she goes through these waxing and waning periods every month. So in general, when I'm thinking about astrology, one of the most useful things for me in working with it is that it can help lead us out of the maze. It can help lead us out of those labyrinths or those traps that we keep ourselves in. And, you know, like in any time in life, you may not know who the best guide or who the best help, the best ally is going to be in a given situation to move you to the next space, right? Or even just come and be your best buddy by your side. And in some ways, I look at planets that way. And so when we're working with different planets will be the best ally in certain situations to get us moving, to get us unstuck, to get us looking at things in a different way, to give us stability when we didn't have it. And then, and by the way, these opening pieces here, whether you are watching or listening later, I'm just kind of giving some of my viewpoints around astrology and how it kind of, I guess, weaves together with my life philosophy. So you get a feel for me as we kind of move in this and where I'm coming from. So in Man's Search for Meaning, which is an amazing book by Viktor Frankl, he is a psychiatrist and also a Holocaust survivor. This is a quote from his book. "When we have nothing more to expect from life, life is still expecting something of us." And Viktor Frankl believed that meaning, finding some sort of meaning in our lives, is what keeps us going. And he worked with so many patients, helping them rediscover a reason to live. And so many times that reason to live came from identifying some sort of meaning, some purpose for why they were there, or why a certain situation was what it was. But once they found the meaning, their whole like life force kicked back on. And so I say we have a birth chart, and that in itself suggests purpose. If we have this chart that has all of these things that we can work with, that holds our potential, then for me, it's a natural symbol of purpose. And astrology can help us find meaning in so many things. You know, we can recognize our gifts, we can look at challenges, we can look at the path we've chosen in this lifetime. And our personal evolution is not just meaningful to us as individuals, or even to our families or those that we surround ourselves with. It's meaningful to the whole planet. There really is only one you that can do what you can do. Which leads me into planets on the first. So my understanding of the planets are that each of the planets represents a part of our human psyche. And if we choose one as a lens or filter to see life through, that gives us a different flavor of our life experience and a different flavor of ourselves. And going through this process of choosing different planets or different parts of ourselves to kind of lead the show helps us see and be more of who we are. So technically speaking, and I'll show on a slide in just a second here, technically, whatever planet you want to work with, you move to the ascendant by rotating the zodiac. And so essentially this means that that planet is going to be the gateway into the birth chart, the gateway into your daily experience, day to day, how you confront life. So I use planets first as an astrological living meditation. It's like an active way every day to use astrology. If you don't even like the word astrology, people don't have to be astrologers to do this, just work with the archetypes. But in doing this, I learn more about myself, I create more options, I learn different things about what I'm good at, things that are challenges for me, and I really live more fully and consciously. And for me, these days, as I'm getting to be older, being awake and being aware are becoming more and more important to me. So this is an example, if you can see, of what it looks like to have a chart for a planet first. So on the left-hand side is my natal birth chart, and on the right-hand side is my chart with Venus first. And so you can see that, so my Venus is at 0 degrees Cancer. So in the Venus first chart, you'll see that the ascendant of the chart becomes the 0 degrees, 5 minutes of Venus. And then everything realigns in accordance with that. So the signs that the planets are in don't change. The aspect relationships between planets don't change. Just the rotation changes based on making that planet the ascendant. And I don't know about all software programs. In Solar Fire, this is under the same section as where you choose house system. So right where you choose Porphyry or Coke or Placidus, there you can choose Venus first, Mars first, whichever planet that you choose. Most of them are there. All right. So for anybody that's on there that's willing to do this, just take a few minutes. It maybe won't be a few minutes, but at least want to give like 30 seconds for a minute here just to breathe and feel your body, because this is meant to be an experiential thing, planets first. So I don't want to just talk about it. So take a few seconds here, breathe and feel into your body. Now imagine the planets are all moving around the sun. Now imagine visualizing the ecliptic, right? Planets are going around the sun. Now imagine that same rotation, but inside of you. Imagine all the planets rotating. And which planet out of that solar system inside of you, now, which one wants to come to your attention? Is there one that wants to be first? Sometimes you'll feel it. Maybe the name of one comes to your mind. Maybe you start to feel hot and you know it's Mars, or you start to want to eat some chocolate, so you know it's Venus, whatever it is. If one is coming forward, then that's the one for you to work with, at least for now. And this really doesn't have to be an overly complicated exercise, right? I mean, there are, when I'm working with clients, I'll oftentimes will look planets in retrograde, planets in certain positions that I know would make a big difference if someone worked with them more. That makes a good reason to choose a planet first, but it doesn't have to be analytical that way. It can just be in your gut, hey, what planet wants to come out and play? So when we move even a little bit in life, think about even having a conversation with your partner or a good friend. And you know how in those moments when you kind of go into your old patterns and you trigger each other, in those moments, if you do something just a little bit different than normal, do you know how the whole thing shifts? Yeah, life is really like that. Because when you move or shift even a little bit, everything else realigns. And in that realignment, your whole world is new. And that's one thing that gets me super excited about planets first. Because they're all inside you, every single planet's there. But we're just, some of us, most all of us were more programmed to have go-to planets, right? I tend to be very Saturn in nature. My Saturnian nature, my mercurial nature, they tend to take the forefront oftentimes, right? And we all have that, but that's not because the other ones aren't there, right? So we can just shift a little bit. So why move it to the ascendant? Well, the first house represents our process of becoming a separate being. And first house experiences are instinctual and often preconscious. You know, you can see this in the way of however you act out your rising sign. If you have planets in the first house, for example, we don't think about them, they just happen. Do you know, right? I think it was, it may have been Adam Gainsbourg, who talked about like your rising sign is how you show up for a party, right? It's just how you step in the door to something. And so choosing a planet first and putting it on the ascendant is a choice to individuate through that part of the psyche instinctually. So a little bit more about the ascendant. The ascendant is the primal, instinctual, and preconscious underlying self-image we are creating, right? The self-image we're creating for ourselves. And we create that moment by moment. And Aries, the natural ruler of the first house, is streaming real-time consciousness, right? Happening now. So anything that we work with on the ascendant, there's an immediacy, a reactiveness, and a now. You know, there really isn't a past and a future with the ascendant. It's the coming out now. Sometimes we talk about our rising sign being our coming out party. You know, and that's another way of looking at this. I mean, well, literally, you know, it's birth, so we come out the birth canal that way. But we can look at coming out in many different ways in our lives. And this self-image that we're creating, our ego, which I understand to be the moon through evolutionary astrology, is what defends this self-image. So the ascendant, whom we are to realize ourselves as distinct from anyone or anything we've known ourselves to be in the past, or anything we might become in the future. It's the me happening now. So you can see how when you put a planet on that space, the me happening now becomes super flavored by the energy of that planet. So I'm a huge Dane Rudhyar fan. And a lot of his approaches are very helpful to me. And particularly how he talks about the ascendant. So here's the thing. As we evolve through transformations in life, you know, our own inner alchemy is happening, our individuality, our own rhythm, it's another ascendant thing to think about, is like, what's your natural rhythm? And how you move through life pushes out through your living human being. And that's through that first house, right? Pushes out into the world. So my own inner rhythm, my own inner cadence, my own inner transformations now they're pushing out into the physical world here, at least in this planet where we live. And that's first house stuff. So Dane Rudhyar talks about the first house and its connection with rebirth and self-deliverance, which which can be looked at as delivery. He says, if we choose it, we can rebirth ourselves over and over again through that process. And he talks about the ascendant and first house as being the point of manifestation of spirit. So I look at it this way. If a part of us dies or ends, in some respects, we can look at the 8th house for that energy. Although we can look at the 4th as endings as well. The 4th tends to be endings, right? The 8th house, I look at transformation. So in this respect, let's stick with the 8th. If a part of us dies or ends, 8th house, it's the first house that keeps us breathing. And in that first house, it displays how our breathing or existence is going to be different after the rebirth. So in some respects, every rebirth and transformation that we go through in our lifetimes pushes back out through the first house, back out through the ascendant. So if we go through a deep metamorphosis of the 8th house, eventually the butterfly is going to be ready to come out. And the butterfly emerges from the first house. You know, I can actually imagine it like down in the juice, down in its guts when it's totally broken down in the cocoon in the 8th house, right? But it's going to get those wings. It's going to get that back together. And that's going to come out the first house, the house of self-actualization. So when you choose a planet first, it's initiating your own rebirth. And you don't need the chart for this. You know, all you need is the intention and the attention on that planet in yourself to start your own cycle of development. So a little bit more about the ascendant. So, and I bring this up because, so for example, when the first time I did this 4 years ago, I've been doing this now for 4 years. The first year I did it, I chose Venus first for a full year. The next year I chose Mercury, the next year Mars, and I'm just about to wrap up a year doing Moon and Saturn at the same time. I decided that I wanted to work with like a polarity or a more full spectrum of something, which is a whole different topic, which has been very interesting. But so when I choose a planet first, let's just say we're use Venus as the example. It's Friday, at least it's Friday here in Los Angeles, where I'm at in the United States, and it's Friday, which is Venus's day. So if I choose Venus first, the question becomes, what kind of questions or reactions or filter is Venus, right? Because everything is instinctually filtered and experienced through the sign and planets on the ascendant. But in the natal chart, for example, we're not aware of this. It just happens. And we ask ourselves subconscious, instinctual questions without thinking about it all the time. And that's what governs, in a big part, how we act in the world. So think now, for example, how different it would be to have Mars on the ascendant versus Venus versus Jupiter, right? The instinctual questions about life or about each moment are going to be really different, which means even if the exact same circumstance was happening, the perspective of it is going to be entirely different, which is the whole point of this. It's to stretch you that way. So and this is just a very short list of examples. You can come up with a lot of questions. And by the way, I have some tools for planets first, just for free on my website. So you're welcome to go there and to contact me later if for some reason you can't find them. But I love making that just available, and I also just love sharing stories about how it's working, you know, living these different planets first. But so some instinctual questions, if you have Aries rising, is just, can I do it, right? In some respects, somebody with Aries rising, in every moment, the instinctual question always is, can I do it? Can I do it? Taurus oftentimes is, can I survive it? Gemini, can I figure it out? You know, Cancer, am I safe? Leo, am I special? Virgo, can I do it right? You know, Libra, is it harmonious? Scorpio, can I really trust it? You know, Sagittarius, you know, am I going to have freedom to move? Capricorn, am I respected? Aquarius, will I have to conform? Pisces, is it going to be painful? You know, and these are just some examples of the things that are always kind of happening under the surface. But you can imagine, excuse me, you can imagine if you have Cancer rising and part of your automatic instinctual questioning is, am I safe? That's going to really feed into how you experience moments in life. Very differently from, for example, you know, a Capricorn. All right, so let's say you've chosen a planet first. Now imagine your ascendant, which we can sometimes refer to as my I am, my self-image, is now married with that planet. And everything is going to be instinctually filtered through that planet. So some questions would be, how does this part of me see, think, and feel? What subconscious questions am I asking without thinking about it? How does this part of me experience and respond to the other parts of me? You know, the example I like to use is, in my natal chart, I have a Venus-Pluto square. I mean, I just live with that all the time. But in my birth chart, I have Aries rising. My chart's ruled by Mars, and I have Saturn conjunct Mercury, which is a very strong influence in my chart. So how I perceive that Venus-Pluto square, in some respects, has been filtered by those other energies that tend to sort of dominate. When I chose to live Venus first, I had a very different experience of what that Venus-Pluto square felt like. Because from the Venus perspective, all of a sudden being comfortable, keeping the peace, feeling good, things not being too difficult, suddenly were more important to me. And so that Venus-Pluto square was a little more uncomfortable. My normal Mars is like, oh, it's ready to fight anyway. So you get an idea of, how these things can be different. Using planets first for counseling or therapeutic use. So one, you can strengthen and develop atrophied facets of the psyche, and depending on how you use your astrology, you can identify these different ways. In evolutionary astrology, we work oftentimes with planets that are square the nodes of the moon, and we refer to those as skip steps. So when you start really living that part of yourself, life kind of really clicks into place. It's a reclaiming. And so retrograde planets, similar feeling. There can be certain transits that could be happening that you might be like, oh, wow, it's a really good time for me to really do my Saturn stuff, and maybe even, when something's going to come up and you think it might be challenging, and instead of sort of the fearful or go under the covers approach or just wait for it to be over, or it's really like say, okay, cool, like that's going to be happening, then maybe I can sort of get in the groove and start to invite that energy into my life, and then that experience is going to be different. Because choosing a planet first gives you a focal point and an archetype to work with. And it can really slow you down with yourself enough to really tune into some things that you might have missed otherwise. When you do something different, your automatic responses are kind of a little bit, I don't know how to say this, like, when you do something all the time you know how to do, it's easy to not think about it or to just sort of move through it. But if all of a sudden you're doing something new that you're not so comfortable with, you might notice some things that you wouldn't otherwise. You're not so quick to skip over steps or so quick to fill in the blanks in a sentence even. Like if you already think you know what someone's going to say, they don't even have to say the full sentence. You already fill it in. But if you really don't know what they're going to say and you really want to know what they're going to say, you might hear for the first time what's underlying that. And then really in general, you just get more room to play. And I'm a big fan of keeping our life stories going, keeping our minds alive, keeping our hearts passionate, and so this is just a new way to move the story in a new direction. Give some new characters within yourself a chance to come out. So one of the things that you can look at when you're working with the planets in daily life, we'll just take the moon, for example, think about it this way. So you're being your moon when, and here we'll give an example for this, you're being your moon when you're being super needy. You're being your moon when somehow you're picking up from past memories of childhood or things, and you're now all of a sudden putting them into the present moment, So these are some examples of when you're being your moon, and you're encountering someone else's moon when you see those same dynamics with them. Someone who's really moody, getting taken over by emotion and being super reactive and self-protective, the moon's coming out to play. And there are times when using your moon self is a benefit. So when might those be? Well, empathy is a big one. Well, even delving into the mystery of life. Self-care, nurturing, all kinds of emotional intelligence. A lot of the stuff ties in with the moon, So those are moments when using your moon self is a real benefit. And so if you're more in touch with it, you can kind of actively figure out, one, who's showing up at the table, and then two, how you might want to shift the chairs around. And using your moon self could be a challenge, as an example, if you're trying to have a calm and collected conversation without taking things personally, right? It's hard to use your moon in that situation, because the moon takes everything personally. So the idea is you can step in and out of the planets as you wish. And when you see this more in other people, instead of taking it as obnoxious or as an affront, or actually without assigning any meaning to it, just observe what planet is actually leading the show right now. What planet might be more useful right now? If someone's coming at you full moon, what might be the best planet for you to bring out, to bring, some more groundedness to the situation. So let's go through I wanted to actually, Ashwin, pop in if anybody has questions. I'm not quite sure how that looks, and I can't see the chat from here. I am going to assume that means there are no questions. Okay, so to the moon. One way to look at the moon is your madness, and I don't mean this in any kind of a negative way. I just mean the moon is very attached with your ego, which doesn't really make sense. There's a lot of irrationality when it comes to the moon. The water element itself is not rational, not linear. It's the language of the heart and the soul. So it's not about making sense, it's about feeling. So with working with moon first, some of the questions are, is my heart in it? Am I really feeling it? Am I comfortable? Do I feel okay? Do I belong? Am I at home? How and when am I reactive to life? And what's the natural way that I take care of myself, nurture myself and others? Am I emotionally stable? Am I getting swept away and taking things personally? And am I accepting and flowing with my feelings and moods as they change? That's kind of the moon zone. The sun, really, this is, an exercise with your light, with your life force, with your vitality, with your sense of purpose. So some of these questions would be, am I shining? Is there room for me to shine here? And when do I naturally shine? What's the quality of my shine? Am I following my purpose and my passion? And when do people or things seem to be naturally attracted to me? When am I the glowing light that people want to be around? When am I warm? When am I inviting? All these things that we know about the sun. And a good question with the sun is, I feel most me with my own energy radiating when I'm fill in the blank. And if you don't know, try things out. If you have been disconnected from your sun, from the center, of your sense of purpose and really embracing and sharing your light, taking up your space, on this planet, and doing your thing, then reconnecting with the sun can be a super, super, super empowering thing. And of course, do I feel proud and do I want to be seen? Mercury, your formula for life. So what's my communication style? Can I solve the problem? Do I have a strategy? Am I connecting the dots? Am I using logic? How do I make sense of things? Can I make sense of things? What makes sense to me? What's my perspective or view of reality? This is so rich if you work with Mercury. If you work with Mercury, your reality bubble will for sure burst numerous times, which is super cool because you get to discover more and more and more, What does the voice in my head say? What thoughts are running in my head? What's the broken tape, to use super old language now that we're very much more evolved in that world, but that broken tape that goes in the head. Do people understand what I'm saying? Do I feel and sound smart? Mercury also wants to be interested. So a good question always is, does this interest me? And does it grab my curiosity? Living Mercury first is a huge choice to learn and explore life through all the different ways that you can look at things and experience things and put them together. Venus, your charm. So what are my natural impulses and behaviors in relationship? Really, like, what's my love style? How do I love? What kind of lover am I? What does love mean to me? What do I want in a partnership? How do I feel about the feminine in and out of me? And again, with feminine, I do not mean female. I mean the receptive energy that we all have within us. What are my essential values? Do I feel at ease, in harmony, and connected? Am I feeling receptive and open? Okay, Venus is the pleasure principle. So when you live Venus first, A big part of the filter is just, do I like it? Do I not like it? Is it yummy? Is it icky? Is it pretty? Is it ugly? With Venus, what's my pleasure? You know, am I enjoying this? You know, other planets, you know, but think about Saturn, right? Saturn's first concern is not, am I enjoying this, or what's my pleasure? If you want to get more kind of the juice out of life, the sweetness out of life, Venus is a great one to choose. And then, what is beautiful in and to me? Mars, your champion. What's my relationship with my own desires? And how do I go about getting what I want? A big question for Mars is, do I have something to pursue, right? Because like Mars wants something to go after. There needs to be something worth fighting for. There needs to be something worth being a hero for, being a champion for. Am I standing up for myself? You know, if you have issues initiating yourself, knowing what you want, going after what you want, and really asserting yourself in life, taking your turn, Mars is awesome to choose. What brings out the fight in me, and how do I fight? What's the quality of my energy and my sex drive? Do I feel brave? Do I feel strong? Do I feel alive? Do I feel turned on? Like, is my life force turned on? Is my libido strong for life? And when and how do I take my turn? If you want to observe this one to see how well you do it, you know, watch yourself in traffic. Like, do you just like wait and let people go? Do you push right in? These are good examples of, hey, you know, am I taking my turn? Maybe you take your turn too often and Mars is not the right choice, but it's an interesting thing to play around with. Jupiter, your path. What's the truth, and is it true for me? Do I really believe in what I'm doing? You know, is there meaning in it? Am I trusting my intuition, following my own inner wisdom? Am I excited and motivated? You know, do I have this sense of levity about me? Do I feel confident and really ready to go for it? Can I see the bigger picture? Am I inspired to go further and explore the world? You know, am I inspired to explore the unknown? And in general, you know, am I optimistic about life and good things happening? You know, with Jupiter, we link it oftentimes, you know, to good luck or fortune. But, you know, my belief around that is that fortune and good luck happen to people who are available for that moment. You know, if you always stay home and never make yourself available, then luck could be all around you, but you won't find it. If you are available for life to find you in serendipitous, lucky, fortunate ways, it does. So in so many respects, Jupiter is about expanding your perspective to be open to good things happening and to putting yourself in the situations where they can happen. Saturn, your success. Am I supporting and honoring myself? What are my personal limits? Do I have healthy boundaries? Have I become too rigid? Am I willing to work hard to produce results? Am I respected? Am I earning my place in society? When and how do I judge myself and others? When do I become controlling out of fear? Am I being mature, taking responsibility for myself? And in general, how's my relationship with authority? Which always comes down to our own inner authority. But your relationship with external authority will tell you a lot about your internal Saturn. Okay, Uranus, your freedom. Can I just be me and do it my way without any rules? Is it authentic? Is it original? Am I embracing the unknown? Am I being innovative and progressive in my thinking? Can I see things objectively without taking it personally? So, you know, if you're someone who's been super moon-esque, you know, Uranus could be a good choice as far as, you know, moving yourself out from that, you know, tight subjective viewpoint. In what ways am I a rebel or a revolutionary? Am I willing to liberate from old ideas and patterns and try something completely new? And do I embrace the quote-unquote crazy in myself and others? Okay, Neptune. When do I lose my sense of self and all boundaries? Am I present to the moment? accepting things as they are? Can I let go of time and agendas and just be? What sweeps me away into a magical state? Do you know, with Neptune, it's like, when do I lose time? When do I lose time and just, oh, I was lost in the clouds or lost in the music? When do I feel at one with everything? And do I have faith in something greater than myself? When and how am I inspired by my own imagination and creativity? And do I really feel unconditional love? And am I letting myself dream and follow my deepest visions? Am I being compassionate with myself and with others? Am I able to surrender to the moment and accept things as they are? Okay, Pluto, last one. Neptune was your nirvana, Pluto is your deepest desire. And with deepest desire and Pluto, it's really about, well, a number of things, but empowerment is a big part of it. With Pluto, the question is, do I feel empowered at the deepest level? And do I feel that I'm consciously aligning with my soul's deepest desire? Am I comfortable confronting the deep and dark parts of myself? And in others, am I comfortable seeing the shadow? Am I aware of my deepest emotional attachments? How am I dealing with endings and major change? Am I supporting my own evolution, letting go of the old to make way for more? You know, Pluto always carries this transformation, rebirth energy, which means ultimately that there are things, it's not so much even that they need to die, oftentimes they're already dead, and we just need to let them go so we can move into the next phase of life. How do I use or respond to power and control? And am I willing to accept death as part of life and let go of control? Okay. Planets in the first are visible, on and in you. So notice how you show up, walk into a room, enter a party, like I was saying before. And how does your physical body want to express the planet? You know, it's like if you chose Mars first, how does Mars want to be dressed? How does Mars want to move? How does Mars, you know, like her or his haircut? You know, these are fun things to play with. And then to ask yourself, you know, are you seen as this planet you're choosing? You know, in your expression, your choices, your actions, try to see how other people are seeing you that way, how it comes through. Because anything that you put on the ascendant or in the first house is going to be easily observed by others. So ask them, you know, pay attention to feedback, pay attention to what people say to you if you choose to live a planet first, and see how all of a sudden, you know, that mirror shows you, you know, what's actually happening. How are you identifying with the planet in yourself? You know, what's your own relationship if it was Mars, for example, or if it was Venus? What's your relationship with that? So just briefly, because I think it's interesting, Judith Hill has this really cool book called The Astrological Body Types, which she talks about how the planets express themselves through our flesh, through our genetics. And I really have found this to be very true. And in my experience, when I've chosen a planet first, and I did choose the periods for a year, so I had long enough to work with it, but my body, to the extent that it could change, keeping in mind that genetics limit things, right? So like my green eyes are not going to turn brown. You know, I'm not suddenly going to be a super short person. But for example, when I chose Venus first, I put on about 20 pounds. You know, I ate more, I enjoyed sensual pleasures more, and I got a little curvier, a little rounder, which was within my body, you know, what it could do to embody that Venus. So here's just some examples of what that can look like in people. And I only picked a few here because we don't have time for all. But the moon, for example, which is all about feeling and response. My favorite example here is Robin Williams. The idea with moon types, according to Judith, is that there was an typically a soft and round, kind of a watery body fat, an overall lack of definition, you know, and so this idea of gentle, sensitive, nurturing, patient, but this softness, you know, and even in the eyes you can see, you know, a bit of a soft dreaminess, you know, it's not a sharp and piercing. So Robin Williams has Sun and Mars in Cancer, and he has Moon and the North Node in the 4th house with the Pisces Moon and Scorpio rising, which I only put in there to point out that there's more water in addition to that. But so this is a good example if you can see what that might look like. A moon type body. And then we move into Mercury, right? Look at just the distinction between the two. Mercury, my perfect example, is Prince. You know, this is all about wit, quickness, ease of motion. And so in general, this is just wonderful because Judith talks about Mercury type bodies and people having a shrill or piercing voice. I mean, that couldn't be more perfectly tailored to, you know, a perfect example coming through Prince. Also this active arms and hands, bright, quick, a petite and agile body. Youthful, elfin-like is what she says about Mercury type people. So, you know, when I was living Mercury first, what was interesting is that a lot of the 20 pounds that I put on with Venus dropped off. I didn't try to do it, but my behavior and activities and things I did shifted and changed, and I just kind of burned some of it off. So Prince has Sun and Mercury in Gemini and a Moon Mercury square. And then for Venus, we're going to look at Lenny Kravitz. Venus, love, harmony, beauty. These, you know, think smooth, graceful body, minimal muscular and bony prominence, right? It's not that Venus people aren't strong or don't have muscles, and of course they have bones, but they don't poke out. They're not overly prominent. There's like a, you know, a smooth curve, pleasantness to everything, and generally in proportion, you know, well proportioned. Dimples, a cleft chin, a cupid's bow, a rosebud mouth, a curvy, beautiful upper lip, you know, big parts of the Venus body type. And Lenny Kravitz has Jupiter, Mercury, and Mars in Taurus, and Venus conjunct the North Node in a Libra midheaven. So if you play around with it, I would encourage you to really play around with it, like all the way through. See how it can show up. See how that part wants to show up. So in closing, as I always say, have fun with it. You know, do it because you want to do it. Do it because you get something out of it. And in general, don't let astrology, your chart, or anyone tell you who you are. They don't know, and it's constantly evolving. You know, we sometimes get stuck in this place of saying, well, you know, my chart just is this way, and it's wired this way, and it works this way. You know, some people might say that planets on the first, because it's an artificial chart, isn't a real thing. But I have had real experiences with it. Who says I can't move things around a little bit? You know, I have Aries rising. I like to do what I want to do. So if I want to rotate my chart around and see what it feels like having something else on the ascendant, I'm going to do it. It's all within me. So give yourself the space if you want to do it. You know, don't be so stuck in anything, including in your chart. We're all pioneers in the frontier of ourselves, right? Go check it out. We're not supposed to know all the answers. You know, a good friend of mine, Michael Gunn, he always says, you know, answers are a prison. The questions set you free. I still use that to this day, and I think it's true. What we choose, what we think about, and what we believe creates our reality. And that's why when I choose a planet first, it happens for me, because I really intentionally pick that frequency. And when I tune into the frequency, just like a radio, right? All the stations are playing, but if I tune into one, then the channel comes through loud and clear. That's what I'm doing when I choose a planet first. And that's what we all can do when we choose a planet first. Got a million stations going on, you know, just flip the dial. And in the end of it, you know, astrology is a language of energy, and we're all energy. And where attention goes, energy flows. All heard that a million times, but it really is true. Okay, that's the end. So Ashwin, if you can hear me, I would invite you to come back on, and let's figure out if anybody has a question.
I think I'm back.
You're back. Hi.
Yeah, I'm back. So,
I,
I think, I mean, I really enjoyed the lecture. I just wish you had some good time like this in New Delhi to present this because I think I got the gist of what you wanted to say there. So I always knew like what you were going to speak, but I think I had a more, lengthier experience in terms of what you wanted to say. So it is a cool technique in terms of assuming that we are the planet and trying to work around with it. I was kind of talking about this technique to someone because I knew about this in the talk that you gave in New Delhi. So it kind of works at a very psychological level, and it gives us an opportunity to exercise free will. So I think that is the most important thing here. So we don't have any questions as it is not on Facebook and not here on Zoom as well. So if you have any final thoughts, we can just, I mean, you can just talk about it, or otherwise we can just finish it off. So it was a fantastic lecture, and I couldn't have, I mean, I couldn't have asked for more.
Thank you. No, it's just fun to share it. I don't have any particular. I just it's funny. I keep thinking like, oh, I'm gonna do something new, and I am doing some other things as well, but it just seems to be the repeating thing. So it's working so well for me. I just get excited. I'm like, oh, just try it and see what happens.
Sure.
So yeah,
Sure.
thank you so much, Ashwin.
Thank you. And we'll get back with next lecture. I think it's Lars Panaro. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.